welcome to the program. I am Sharon Ijason. On this week edition of the program, we'll be focusing on activities that happened during the week in the labor sector. During the last week, we experienced workers hit the streets across the country following the removal of fuel subsidy by the federal government. We also have news stories for you. We will be right back.
Victory for us, forward, forward.
Few hours after the Labour Centres decided to suspend its nationwide protest, the Organised Labour has issued a fresh warning that it may declare a nationwide strike if its leaders are charged to court for contempt by the federal government through the National Industrial Court of Nigeria. The Nigerian Labour Congress, however, affirmed the decision to suspend further protests. The communique also stated that the NLC would maintain the required vigilance needed to hold government accountable on its assurances and governance in general. On August 2nd, 2023, workers took to the streets across the country. The purpose? To protest against the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy. In Abuja.
After Tuesday's meeting with the government team, Organised Labour resolved to go ahead with its planned nationwide protest. As early as 7 a.m., members of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Trade Union Congress and the civil society community defied the early morning rain to converge on the Unity Fountain. Then the procession began. There was a brief stop at the Federal Ministry of Justice where the protesters insisted they did not run foul of any court injunction.
If we are told that they were sending about 400 billion every month on subsidy, 2 months after, we should be thinking about a profit of about 1 trillion. We should have been channeled to reduce the suffering of all Nigerians.
There is no country in the world that allows its currency to be floated 100%.
There is nothing that workers of the world and workers of Nigeria have gotten without a struggle.
From the ministry, the protest headed for the National Assembly, but the gates to the complex were shut. Several appeals to grant access failed, and the protesters felled the gates. Inside the National Assembly, Labour presented a 7-point demand, including activation of the nation's refineries and a reversal to the old pump price of petrol. The Senate, through the Chief Whip, appealed to Labour to suspend its nationwide strike.
I'm begging you to call off the strike and give us 1 week, and we will report progress. And if you are not satisfied with the progress we are making, then you can take further action. Please.
Can trust me. If it is not working, I will call your leadership and tell them that this is how it is.
In Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, workers from various unions across different sectors joined the protest. They gathered under the bridge in Ikeja where they started their rally.
We are not seeing the kind of enthusiasm, the kind of response that a government should give to its citizens. The policies are biting very high, but the responses are slow. It's not matching the pain of the people. That's what Labour is saying.
Give us palliative that we could see the effect of the suffering of the masses. I think that is what we are all demanding for. So we all know what is going on in this country. A loaf of bread now is around 1,000 naira or 2,000 naira. 1,002, a loaf of bread. So it's to tell you this is not moving. But we believe government is a continuity. Mr. President has been elected. He was once a governor, a senator. And you know the suffering of the masses. I think he should use his wise experience.
The protesting workers ended the rally at the governor's office in Alausa, Ikeja, after submitting the Charter of Demands of the Congress.
A lot of things have been said. We have heard you. And the letter has been given to us. What we all want is a better Nigeria. And I'm sure that we will get there. That the leadership has said we should dialogue, we will dialogue. We will dialogue. And then you will hear very soon.
I met with a member of the Private School Tutors Union of Nigeria who laments that workers in the sector are poorly paid.
This protest is because our sector is the most and the worst hit when it comes in terms of the inflationary effect on the workers. We are members of NRC, and we, as a member of NRC, we have to heed to this clarion call to be able to drive home what we are experiencing when it comes to this fuel subsidy removal.
Some of the demands of the workers are immediate implementation of the resolutions with NLC jointly signed by government and TUC. Others are reversal of anti-people policies, including the recent hike in price of petroleum, school fares and VAT, as well as recognition and support to the Presidential Steering Committee. During a national broadcast on Monday, President Bola Tinubu unveiled 500 billion naira palliatives for manufacturers, small businesses and farmers. The president also revealed plans of his administration to increase salary of workers and acquire 3,000 mass transit buses for the citizens. In other parts of Southwest,
members of the organized labor in the Southwest complied with a nationwide protest over petrol subsidy removal in the different states. In Akure, the Ondo state capital, the protest was peaceful as labor leaders marched to the governor's office where they submitted a letter to the representative of the state's governor.
Fix our local refineries in Port Harcourt, Warri and Kaduna.
All the demands, I know that the president himself will appreciate the fact that you are assisting him.
The story was not different in Ekiti State as members of the Nigerian Labour Congress NSC and the Trade Union Congress TUC joined the nationwide protest.
We want a situation whereby the hike in the port price of fuel should be reduced. By so doing, our currency will have value.
That say labor don't represent the masses. That's greatest misconception.
In Abeokuta, the state capital,
They are urging the federal government to proactively speedy the action of discharging enough palliative. The accrued trillions of naira that has been gotten from removal of fuel subsidy must be invested back into the economy.
In Osun State, members of labor unions and civil society coalition converged on the Nelson Mandela Freedom Park in Osogbo for the protest.
That policy, subsidy, as practiced in Nigeria, is a scam. And we know that that policy has been implemented to favor the rich.
Members of the organized labor in Oyo State were not left out as they occupied major roads in Ibadan, the state capital, to press home their demands.
We need short-term answers, we need long-term answers. We need the government to know what to roll in at the right time.
The protest took place in a peaceful atmosphere in the southwest states.
And in South and Southeast, workers also trooped to the streets.
The New Market Roundabout, FRCN, the State Secretariat, Okpara Avenue and CBN Road are some of the areas the protesters marched through before ending at the government house.
Before we talk about whether our salary can take us home, today it cannot take us to bus stop. He can't even step out of your office.
In Anambra State, a similar solidarity walk took place from the State Union Secretariat in Awka and terminated at the Ekweme Square. Led by the state chairman of the NLC, they are seeking a review of the federal government's policies.
Our salary has remained the same. Nothing has changed. The minimum wage has not been reviewed. There is no palliatives. Where the cost of living, the cost of house rent, the cost of school fees, everything has gone up.
In Imo State, members of the organized labor also joined the nationwide protest against the federal government over the fuel subsidy removal. The protest, which caused serious gridlock at the popular warehouse roundabout in Owerri, also got solidarity from different civil society groups.
We are appealing to the federal government of Nigeria to rescind some harsh decisions meted against the poor Nigerians. Freeze our refineries. Pay university workers 8 months arrears.
In the South-South, the protest in River State began from the Secretariat of the Nigerian Labour Congress in Port Harcourt. They marched to the government house to register their grievances with the economic policies of the federal government, which they say have plunged the nation into further hardship.
We are here to protest the bad policies of governors of Nigeria today that made the rich to get richer and the poor to get poorer. That have made us as Nigerians today, we cannot afford a square meal for one day.
While in Edo State, Governor Godwin Obaseki says the state government will release 500 million naira to distribute among the less privileged. Governor Obaseki made this known when he received the protesting workers that kicked off at the popular Oba Obuerawin Square before climaxing at the government house.
We know that your take-home pay can no longer take you home. Something must be done. We in Edo State will support your action that your wages must reflect the current reality.
In Delta State, the Organised Labour staged a peaceful protest in Asaba as they call on the federal government to revive all the refineries and legalize artisanal refining by regulating their activities to make premium motor spirit available.
We have only 4 refineries and they are not working. We have our boys in the creeks that are refining fuel and the government says it is illegal. Why not legalize it so that we will not import fuel again?
And in Bayelsa, the protesters marched along the Mbiama-Yanagwa road to the gate of Government House in Yanagwa to demand the full implementation of the earlier arrangements reached with the federal government on the fuel subsidy removal.
Federal government should adopt CNG as alternative to fuel. We call on federal government to implement people-centered agreements reached with organized labor. Just 2 weeks ago, we launched the Prosperity Transport Scheme. And that scheme is meant to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal.
In Kano, they started off on one of the major roads in the state, carrying placards and singing solidarity songs, and ended the Kano Government House roundabout, where they handed over a letter containing their demands to the State Secretary to the government, Bapa Bichi. In Katsina State, officials of the NLC, in company with the police and operatives of the State Security Service, went round strategic routes in the state capital, chanting their slogans in disapproval of the petrol price increase. The procession started from the NLC headquarters along the Liapa roundabout and ended around the state's ring road. In Kaduna State, the NLC fuel subsidy protests were held amid tight security. There was a deployment of additional security personnel across potential hotspots to ensure a peaceful demonstration, considering the state's past experiences of violence.
Hours after the protest, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria met with Organised Labour, which also led to the National Executive Council meeting, where further decisions were made.
As you can see, Nigerians are not happy. Workers are badly hit. As you are all aware, fixed income earners are not really smiling. So on the basis of that, Nigerians have decided to come together and speak with one voice and to tell the government that enough is enough. And what we are expecting from the government, we are expecting sincerity. We don't just want rhetorics. We are tired of mere statements, press releases without implementation.
The agreement they have signed with the TUC, NSC, let them go and implement it. Then the discussion, they should consider the generality of Nigeria. So my advice to them is for them to listen to the voice of the masses.
The government really need to hear the crying of the masses, the Nigerian people, because it's not been easy for the people to come out in such a huge mass to protest against the fuel subsidy and every other thing that is around, that is happening in Nigeria right now. I think the government actually needs to have a listening ear to the people, of Nigeria.
Protest rally, it shows how people are not comfortable. They are quite not comfortable in the sense that things are hard for people. And it is so obvious that the government in this country, all the policies they are making is for the ruling elites. It's not really for the masses. It shows. So hence we came out to demonstrate to the government that we are not happy. We cannot just stay home and be suffering all this alone. So we came out and let them know the issue of minimum wage need to be hastened up so that it will cushion the effect of what the hardship the workers are facing.
On the profile interview segment this week, I'll be speaking with the national president of NUPENG, Comrade Williams Aporeya. He brings us up to speed on conversation that was held with the federal government and also the NEC meeting with the Nigerian Labour Congress. He told us how the Nigerian Labour Congress came up with the date of August 19th as the deadline towards which fuel subsidy removal palliative discussion must have ended. It's good to have you on the program.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. The pleasure is mine once again.
Well, it was a successful protest some few days ago when organized labor took to the streets to demand for some certain things from the federal government. However, there was a meeting with the presidency which you were part of after the protest on that day. Organized labor set a new deadline given to governments to address all issues that has to do with the removal of fuel subsidy. You were part of the meeting with the federal government. Can you bring us up to speed on why it's important for organized labor to set a deadline towards achieving some of the things that you might have discussed closed door at the villa?
Yeah, let me state clearly here that the 19th of August is actually not a deadline. It's a date that was agreed by both parties. When I mean both parties, I mean the federal government and organized labor. That beginning from when discussion started, you remember the president removed the subsidy, and thereafter discussions commenced, with organized labor. And there was this understanding that to conclude discussions on any palliative, on any policy, it should be within 8 weeks. So from there till 19th of August is going to be the 8 weeks, that was agreed by both parties. So it's not like, it's an ultimatum, but it was a period mutually agreed, by the government team and organized labor.
So how optimistic is organized labor as regards results that might would have been recorded from the meetings that will be happening before August 19th?
Before yesterday or the first day, I can say that discussions were not going well. But after the protest rally and the subsequent intervention by the president of this country, I'm sure there's a clear direction. Prior to when there was this peaceful protest rally, discussions, I can say were not going, to the right direction. But after the protest and the subsequent intervention by the president, I'm sure going forward, we are going to have, more meaningful discussions, that will, in a great way, help the situation.
Moving on to the next question. During the meeting with the federal government, the federal government of Nigeria came back to announce to Nigerians that the Port Harcourt refinery will be up and running by December 2023. My question is this. You are among the unions that is key in the Nigerian labor sector. You represent NUPENG. Before now, even before this government came on board, what has been your observations as regards the readiness of the rehabilitation and of the Port Harcourt refinery?
Well, we're all aware that before now there have been several rehabilitations, on those refineries. But I want to limit my comment on the present situation, which I want to say I'm aware of because we are part of the steering committee on rehabilitation of refineries. And I can say that from what we are seeing, there is hope that the December deadline for the resumption of activities in that refinery could be realistic. But let me also state again that we are not looking at the entire refinery coming on stream. Yeah, you remember we have two plants in that refinery, in Port Harcourt refinery. There are two plants there, and only one right now and is being expected to come on stream in December. The other one is still under rehabilitation, though the process is still on. But what we are optimistic about that we come on stream in December is the plant one, which to a great extent is will not actually take care of all our petroleum needs. But again, it's a step forward.
It's a step forward. So beyond having the Port Harcourt refineries up and running by December, what would be your word of advice or what would be your recommendation to ensure that we have more of our refineries up and running, as perhaps it might be the solution towards reducing the cost of PMS?
Well, it has been our agitation that more private sectors should be encouraged to come into the sector. We have written several papers to federal government on how individuals can be encouraged, provided the enabling environment for investors to come in, and set up refineries. We have also said that even the IOCs that are producing crude oil in the country today should be also encouraged to also produce a part of their crude oil production. They should refine part of that crude oil production, for local consumption. Not every part of that product should be exported. I'm sure with such moves and steps, we can, despite the alternatives we're actually looking for now, that will also help, in ameliorating the challenges we're having, as of today.
Back to the oil and gas sector, which you are a major player in. The Petroleum Industrial Bill, which is now an act, was on for a while. I want to know what the role of organized private sector was during the process of the bill becoming an act. Many have argued that fuel subsidy removal has come to stay because it is law and it is not budgeted for. So I would like to ask, what was the role of organized labor during this conversation?
We made several presentations, during the enacting of that law. And for really one of those conditions we gave or suggested to government, though removal of subsidy was not part of our suggestion, on that bill. But that was position of government. But our position was that if there's going to be any removal of subsidy, we should first look at how we can produce locally. And that's what I said earlier here, that government must put enabling environment for more refineries to put in place where we can refine this product locally. That only then removal of any subsidy, could be successful. But look at what has happened now. That process was not put in place, and the subsidy was removed. And every situation now has changed, immediately. So our position then and our recommendation to government, was to ensure that they do everything possible, first to look for alternative to PMS, and again, encourage investors, to put more refineries in place so that whenever it's taken away, we will not find ourselves in the situation we are right now.
Okay, finally, what will be your message to first Nigerian workers at this time? And what will be your message to state government? We have some state government that have been doing some things in their own capacity to ensure that there is succor. But generally, what will be your message to Nigerian workers at this time, especially the members in your sector?
I think my position here, first to state governments, is that they should be more sensitive to the plight of workers in their employ. Asking workers to work 2 or 3 days in a week is not the solution. They should be able to put, some measures in place to ameliorate the situation on ground. Subsidy has been removed, and that means more money, to their coffers. And they should be able to deploy such resources back to the people. Then to my members and to workers, especially in the oil and gas industry, I would also advise that their priority should also change. The way we do things in the past shouldn't be the same way we do things now. When I say priorities in the way we spend, should also be checked. There are a lot of, expenditures that are avoidable even as a worker. So there should be a strict discipline, in their spending, because the resources right now, are small. And so we should be able to also ensure that the little resources that are coming our way, we spend it, judiciously, rather than, involving in frivolous, expenditures. The times are quite hard, but we do hope that as time goes on, it could be better. At this point, we're all living on hope, and hopefully things could get better as time goes on.
It's a renewed hope. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we were told about renewed hope. So we are keen into that renewed hope.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sharon, for this opportunity.
And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember that labor creates wealth.